You and I really didn't set out to do this, but in driving a couple of different high-performance variants of the 718 series, we have created a mini-series of sorts for an all-new engine, a 4-liter flat 6 that is naturally aspirated. No, it is not based on a GT3 engine. It is magnificent. I have covered it in many other episodes. Go check those out. Here is the first time we are doing this with less horsepower. So instead of 414 horsepower, we're going down to 394 horsepower. That comes in at 7,000 RPM. The torque remains the same, interestingly, at 309 pound-feet. Now, more interesting than that, the torque remains the same whether we go up to a 718 Spyder or down to a 718 Boxster S, which is a 4-cylinder turbo. This being our third episode of a pseudo mini-series, one would think we would run out of interesting tidbits to find in this engine. Turns out I've found two more. Number one, the transmission, thankfully, the one that has been sent to us is a 6-speed manual. It is on offer with a 7-speed PDK. However, if one selects the proper God-given transmission, it has a dual mass flywheel that comes directly from a 991.2 GT3. And then number two, in the Porsche world GTS, it means more value than anything else. And one of the things that is fitted as standard here is a sport exhaust. Now that's important to you and I more than just saving a couple of bucks. There are two performance enhancements. Both have everything to do with the redesign of the sport exhaust system. You see, there are individual exhausts from each bank of the engine that are completely separate all the way to the back of the now revised central muffler. That design enables less back pressure for the 4-liter flat 6 and changes the sound of the car, which we will experience throughout this episode. But how does that impact performance figures? Well, it's 5 miles an hour slower VMAX than the Spyder. It's 182 as opposed to 187. But then there's the Boxster S, the 4-cylinder turbo. That's 177, so it's kind of right in the middle. But now switching gears on you, 4.3 seconds to 60, the Spyder 4.2. Yet for grins and giggles, let's go back to that Boxster S with the 4-cylinder turbo, 4.4 seconds. So whether it's VMAX or 0 to 60, this is right in the middle of all the performance figures of these three vehicles. So in a kind of roundabout way, this is the Goldilocks. I don't know about you guys, but I'm confused. Yes, this is a GTS, but it's also a serial production Boxster, which means it has a serial production Boxster roof, which means it's got more insulation, it's fully electric, which would tell me it's heavier. But if you compare this to the Spyder we already drove, yes, we already talked about the engine being the same, this is just about 50 pounds lighter. Me, I expected the opposite. Oh my God, did you hear that? God, that sounded good. Wow, that engine, it is magnificent with this roof down. But anyway, back to actually pushing power. Remember, rear-wheel drive vehicle. The power delivery in this thing is virtually identical between this, the Spyder, and the GT4. Now, comparing downward this to a Boxster S or a base Boxster, it's such a delta in power delivery over that 4-cylinder. I would argue this should really be the only engine that is on offer in this car. You and I have discussed the two elephants in the room, the engine and the sport exhaust. Yet beyond that, what makes a GTS a GTS? The answer kind of falls into two buckets. First is cosmetic, things like tinted lenses front and rear, black trim all the way around the car. Then the interior, number of changes like sport seats and a lot of Alcantara chief among them. Then there are the changes for you and I, and those would be mechanical. All GTS 4-liters are fitted with Sport Chrono as standard. In addition to that, adjustable transmission mounts. Then Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus with a mechanical limited slip differentials fitted as standard. Then the 20-inch wheels, which look wunderbar, also fitted as standard. Then there's one more change, but to discuss that, we need to go drive the car. The last Porsche you and I drove was the GT4. And there we went on and on about the ride quality is not compromised by the suspension setup from the GT engineers. This is the serial production setup, so it shares pretty much everything from the standard car. The exception is PASM Sport is fitted as standard, so it rides 20 mils lower than the standard cars. However, remember the GT4 and the Spyder, those have a specific GT suspension which rides 30 mils lower. And you would think 10 mils really wouldn't make a huge difference. You get behind the wheel of this thing, like I came from an AMG GT53 to trade to get to this car. Granted, that was a Cadillac Eldorado compared to this. I would argue this suspension setup is more for civilians, especially for use around town. But the thing is, man, the minute you get into this, wow, you notice a difference. It's like it hits you in the face. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game, Mind the Options game, with today's contestant. On second thought, contestant, not the right terminology for this vehicle. Rather, this is a science experiment sent to us from the folks in Zuffenhausen, and what we are testing for is how many options can you put on one vehicle from one manufacturer? No exaggeration, this car has every option that Porsche makes. And it's not just Porsche, they ran out of Porsche options, and they have Porsche exclusive manufacturer options. For the sake of expediency, I am not going to point out the ones that are Porsche exclusive manufacturer, rather just assume most of them are. Now that we're clear with each other, let's dive right into a 2021 Porsche 718 Boxster 4.0 GTS for $88,900. For the avoidance of doubt, that is about $13,000 more dear than a Boxster S with a 4-cylinder engine. To that, we add the stunning shade of carmine red, $2,580. Then a roadster top in black. I don't understand why you would pay so much for paint and then go for black. Then there's the leather Racetex interior in black and carmine red trim with GTS interior package, which is all that suede stuff, really makes a difference, as well as the red face for the tack, $2,160. Then headlight cleaning system with covers painted in the exterior color, $300. Supplemental safety bars in high gloss black. That stuff there, $640. The Porsche logo on the rear in satin black, $220. The rear wing in high gloss black. I told you this thing had every option, $410. Then the Porsche ceramic composite brakes with yellow calipers, $7,410. I think I would skip on that one. Power steering plus, $280. That is a different tune to your power steering, not power steering. The 20-inch wheels are fitted to standard. Lane change assist, $700. Light design package, $350. Power folding exterior mirrors, $330. Porsche entry and drive. That is the key in your pocket. You go up to the car, open the door, the car opens. That is $800. Something that is free on Hyundais. GTS interior package. Yes, we already paid for the leather and sort of like the dressed up seats, that kind of stuff. We got to pay more for the GTS interior package, $3,690. Then there are the full bucket seats. We will talk more about these later in the episode, $5,900. These sun visors in Racetex, it's kind of like a suede, $590. Then something me personally kind of a sucker for, the door sill guards in carbon fiber that are illuminated, worth every penny at $1,210. Smartphone compartment, if I'm reading this correctly, this is the Qi wireless charging system, $560, optional on a $90,000 car. The Bose surround system, $990. The navigation, including Porsche Connect, $2,320. Then we just add the destination and delivery for $1,350 for a total suggested retail price of $121,690. Yes, an absolutely obscene amount of money to spend on a Boxster, and yes, one could have a 992 with a couple of options for the exact same figure. However, this exercise was not about value in Boxster. This was everything you can do with the Boxster platform and then some, which gave me an idea. What are people really spending on options on these things? So I dug around with the folks at Porsche, and we isolated this specific car, the previous gen GTS. And it turns out the average option spend on that generation of GTS Boxster was $18,000. So about those $6,000 seats, they may look identical to the seats we had in that GT4 we recently drove. However, they're entirely different. And it turns out it's a European thing, being this is a German market car. in Europe, there are 2 racing seats on offer. The one we had in that GT4, that is a fixed bucket, meaning it is a carbon shell. It does not move, just forward and backward, and then up and down electronically. These only move forward, backward, yet there is an additional adjustment. Now, it's not something like an 18-way power seat where you hit a button and it goes back, or even like a ratchet adjustment. You got to get tools out to adjust the backrest here. Other than that, you do notice immediately when you get in this thing, the cushions are a bit softer in this racing seat than in the previous racing seat in that GT4. You may remember at the end of our GT4 episode, I gave you a bit of financial advice, which I rarely do aside from scolding you about taking debt on vehicles. Here's the PS to that discussion. This is a fantastic vehicle. However, me, I would go for the GT4 or the Spyder. And really, it's not about content or the way the vehicle drives, because they are so similar. It is about money. It really is only about a $10,000 difference, base price to base price. I would forego the fancier roof, really the better usability around town that this vehicle is, and a nicer interior for a bone stock Spyder, even with a basic color exterior and interior, or a bone stock GT4, kind of like the one we had. And in doing so, I'd be prizing driving dynamics over all else, because let's be honest with one another. Even though there is a 20 horsepower deficit here, the power delivery between this and the Spyder are almost identical. So this is where I go back to how I would approach this equation. And let's call that $10,000 delta between the base price of the 2 cars a budget. So instead of me spending that budget on fancy options for this one, I would do the Spyder or the GT4 and just go no options. And I think there'd be an additional benefit going that route, in that those are GT cars. They're not limited edition, but they're limited in numbers. So that may turn into a higher resale percentage than this. So with that, there's my car guy, Dave Ramsey, hybrid approach to mid-engine Porsches fitted with a naturally aspirated 4-liter flat 6 engine. Until I see you next time, bis später.